lady the product, and she says, that'll be whatever it is, $20. And then I'll say, here's my little payment mechanism, card, cash, check, whatever. She does the little button pushing, and in about 10 seconds more, I'm walking out the door. Okay? But when you buy a house, it's 90 minutes sitting in this cramped little room around a conference table where the people keep sending papers your way, and you're just signing. And I've never read one of those documents. I mean, you can't read that many documents in 90 minutes. It's like constantly, and it's a full page of script, and the person on the other side says, okay, now this one just tells us that you're not going to sue us if someone else claims that your house really belongs to them. This one over here says if there's a flood, we're not responsible for that one, just so long as it doesn't reach into the actual floorboards of your house. Okay? And you're signing all these documents, and they're telling you these words, and the words take like a sentence, but the things on the paper are a whole 3 or 4 paragraphs long. More fear and trembling. So I'm sitting there, and I'm realizing there's 90 minutes of this going on, and I'm just zoned out. I'm not paying attention to anything. No wonder the guy keeps offering me Snickers bars. It's just like, here's more paper. And I realized the intensity of the commitment that I was making. Up until that point, it was a process. But when I got into that room, and I'm putting my name on documents that include things that I've never heard of before, for reasons I never knew existed, for lawyers and other people who might possibly do something evil to me if I do something evil to the situation or whatever, I'm now realizing the intensity of this commitment. When I put my name on the paper, it's serious. And so here's step number 9. It gets better. Step number 9, they give me the keys. And then we do the little celebration dance, right after you leave the closing. I don't know if you've ever bought a house, but you leave the closing and you look at your spouse and you hold the keys and you're like, we did it. We made it through. We survived. We're still breathing. And so that's step number 9. And then step number 10, you move in with more fear and trembling because now you have to pay for this thing over the next 30 years of your life. It's kind of similar to getting married, I proposed to my wife, and that was easy. I mean, that was cool. But then the year following the proposal was filled up with preparations and planning and writing checks and paying for things that I didn't really know I needed. Flowers and stuff. And so, you're paying for things, and it's just one thing after another, but then you get to that moment on that day. And all of that other stuff is meaningless. All that other stuff is just sort of window dressing. You might have spent $10,000 on the stuff leading you up to that moment, but when you get to that moment and nothing else matters. Because in that moment, it's your opportunity to make that commitment and to say, yes, I'm serious about this. Both of those things have something that are wrong when it comes to the Bible. In both of those situations, I make a decision, I go through a lot of effort, and then finally I come to the place where I actually work on that effort, and now the rest of my life, I have to live according to that effort mentality. When we look at the Bible, we see something that is exactly opposite. And I want to show that to you right now. So if you would take your Bibles and turn to page 9. That's Genesis 15. The Bibles that we passed out, it's on page 9. Genesis chapter 15. We're not going to read the whole chapter, but actually I think we will read. Yeah, we'll just read the whole chapter. So God is getting ready to talk, and we read, it says, "After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. 'Do not be afraid, Abram, I am your shield, your very great reward.'" Abram, of course, is the guy who later becomes known as Abraham. But Abram said, "O sovereign Lord, what can you give me?" What a great question to start out with. "What can you give me, since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus." And Abram said, "You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir." Then the word of the Lord came to him, "This man will not be your heir, but a son coming from your own body will be your heir." He took him outside and said, "Look up at the heavens and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Then he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. I've talked about this before, but this is an amazing line because God comes to Abram, and God says, I'm for you. God says, I'm your shield. I'm your reward. I'm going to do these things. And then Abram has the gall to say, okay, God, what are you going to do for me? And then God says, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you a child. I'm going to give you so many children, it's going to outnumber the stars in the heavens. And then we get this little line where it says, Abram believed the Lord. And God counted that belief as if Abram had never done anything wrong. That's what righteousness means. God says, because you believed in me, everything you've ever done wrong, we're just going to wipe that away. As far as I'm concerned, God says to Abram, as far as I'm concerned, you are perfect because you believe. Keep going. He also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. Now, this is something I didn't understand until I went to seminary and got taught what it was all about. But let me explain to you what's going on here. God says, bring me these animals. Abram gets the animals and he cuts them in half. And then he lays them down in a row. And what you don't understand unless you really understand the ancient history, the ancient culture, I never got this. But what Abram is doing is he's reenacting an ancient ceremony called a covenant ceremony. And the way it worked in ancient times is you would take a valuable animal, one valuable animal, and you would cut it in half and put it on one side of a line and the other half on the other side of the line. And then the two people making the promise would stand together on this side, and they would make the promise to each other. And that promise would also include a curse. And the curse said, may we become like this animal if we ever break our commitment. May each one of us individually be cut in half, because breaking a commitment is like getting cut in half. I make a commitment to you, and now if I break that commitment, a part of me is getting taken away because I made a promise. So they made this promise to each other that included the oath. It's kind of like, when little kids go, cross my heart, hope to die. That's what they were saying. They're saying, I hope to die if I ever break up with this commitment we're making. And then what they would do is they would hold hands, arms, or maybe just walk together, but they would walk together through the middle of the animals until they got